sharing. Hi, and welcome to the show. I'm Brenda Kilhofer, and I am your cheap mama, and I am really excited for today's show. The guest that I have today is somebody that I have known for many, many, many years. In fact, Melissa and I have done a bunch of personal development seminars together. We've grown as I've been to some that she has created. We've gone to some to learn how to do it together, and really a good close friend, despite the fact that she's all the way across the globe in Australia. And she has been a role model in many, many ways. She built a business in 5 years to over $14 million. And has since sold that business, and that's all part of her story. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Mel.
Okay. Hi, Brenda. So great to be here and to see your face again. We were just reminiscing before we got started here, and it's been almost a decade, almost a decade since since I've moved to Australia, and 6 years since we've seen each other. And you know, it's so interesting. I was thinking about it last night, how quickly a decade goes, doesn't it? It just flies by. And then I was thinking, oh shoot, we've only got like on average 8 of those, like 8 decades. That's it.
Wow.
I was like, whoa, okay. When I put it in perspective like that, it's crazy. But I digress. Thank you for having me here. It's such an honor to share a bit about my story. And I was just saying that I have actually not shared this before. I was writing it all kind of down yesterday, just to give Brenda give you a synopsis and a kind of a background, because we haven't connected for so long. And it was just really thrilling to be able to kind of get it out and get it on paper, I guess, as sketchy as it was, and Reader's Digest version that it was. But yes, in essence, when I grew up, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. At least I thought I did. And it was either that or a backup dancer to Madonna. Go figure. And my mum and dad were entrepreneurs. And so I just had this, and plus entrepreneur, I couldn't spell it. Sometimes I barely can today. Thank you for autocorrect. But yet it was such a buzzword when I grew up. It was like this new word that was this thing that represented who you were if you were in business. And my parents were in business. And so I grew up thinking, I want to be a successful entrepreneur. You know, we don't grow up thinking I want to be a failing anything. I want to be successful. I want to climb the corporate ladder, or I want to drive a fancy, nice car. I remember by the time I'm 30, I used to think when I was a young teenager, by the time I'm 30, I will not be married, because I don't need that kind of, I can be an independent woman. I'm not going to be married, but I'm going to have this stellar career as an entrepreneur. Don't think I really even understood what that meant. And a BMW. You know, those were the glitzy glamour ideals that I grew up with, that my parents instilled in me, not to be greedy or to just take and chase. But I got the sense of that to be the best you could be. You know, my parents would always say, shoot for the moon, and if worse, you'd land among the stars. You know, so that just that real pull towards being a successful entrepreneur. And I didn't do it for so many years. I used to call myself the gunner girl. I was gonna do this, and I was gonna do that, and I was gonna do this, full of ideas, but never, I guess, the courage, I guess, to throw myself into that and to actually become a quote unquote entrepreneur. So fast forward to 34. I was 34. I was living in Arizona with my husband, Tom, and I see this concept. I see this business, I see this product in the US that's just on fire. It's massive. And I just think, oh my gosh, that's it. That's the idea. That's the business. I'm going to do that in Australia. And so I just started from the concept, just started from scratch. And that was in November 2012. And then by, I want to say, it was February 2013. So what's that? December, January, February, just in 3 months, we had pre-launched, and I say we, but it was me, myself, and I pre-launched this company. And while I was in the US, started it in Australia, which was crazy, but built this company to a multi-million-dollar company. And I've got to say that it was not because of my brilliance. I saw it was a product market fit. And it was really something that just took off. And overnight, we had, in the first year had done almost $2 million in sales. And within 5 years had done more than $14 million in sales. So it was a crazy ride. It was nonstop. It was busy. It was fun. It was exciting. We had a real mission behind the company. And it just really literally was an overnight success. I know they say there aren't any overnight successes, and maybe we can unpack that a little bit. Was I ready for it? Yes. Had I done a bunch of personal development work on myself over the decade before that? Yes. Had I been an entrepreneur at a corporate role before that taught me how to run a business? Yes. However, really, I want to say that it just really was an overnight success. And I feel like I can't take any credit for that because literally it was not because of my doing. It was really something else.
Well, you had purpose behind it. I mean, I know that you were offering microloans to people in different countries to help start their own businesses. So there was certainly a cause behind it. I mean, your heart, even the name of the company I know was truly all about your heart, right?
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Yeah, it was called Lillian, which meant pure blessing. It was Tom and I always wanted to have 2 kids, and we already had the names picked out. It was going to be TJ and Lillian, and Lillian means pure blessing. And I just always felt that we had a hard time having children. We've done 11 IVF cycles so far. And we have our little TJ, but we don't have Lillian. But I guess maybe Lillian, the business, was my baby that I birthed into the world.
And some people feel that, I hear a lot of women talking now about birthing, and it's birthing their businesses or birthing some new creative project or something like that. So very well, maybe we don't always have it right. Right there. And so I know the last time you and I were together, you were actually pregnant with TJ. I was pregnant with my son, Jeremiah, both in their own rights, little miracle babies. We'd both, suffered loss before that, for sure, in having them. And so tell me what happened, like, all of a sudden, and I remember, purchasing some of the skincare from Lily Ann. And then next thing I know, it was like, okay, we're wrapping up. We're done. What shifted? What changed? What happened?
Oh my gosh. A lot. And this, we almost need like an entire day or an entire book to share this story, because I think there was so much in this. And so, okay, where do we begin? Okay, everyone who's listening, this has been the craziest ride. And I guess I just want to share my story so that then others can glean from what I've experienced. Because like I said, when I grew up, I wanted to be a successful entrepreneur. However, what I found myself doing was chasing and chasing and chasing. It was like the first million was never enough. Neither was the second, and neither was the last 14. It was just never enough, Brenda. And so in that whole journey of Lily Ann, so I had started Lily Ann Jewelry first, and that was the company that just took off. That was the brand that just took off. And then 3 years in, I started Lily Ann Beauty, which was our skincare brand. There was a sister brand to Lily Ann Jewelry. But during that whole process, during that whole experience of building the business, it was just a constant chasing. It was, okay, team, what are we going to do this financial year? Or what are we going to do this month? And it was just, and I'd learned that from my corporate career. I'd worked for a travel agency where I was in sales. And so it was constant. It was almost part of my DNA. It was always part of who I was at that time, where it was just this constant, okay, what's the next goal? What's the next goal? Okay, we've done that. How much more? And it was never satisfying. It was never enough. and probably a reflection of perhaps my set of mindset or programs about myself too. That is definitely something that has come through in the journey of personal development, is that I've always felt like this never enoughness. So maybe that played into it, but there was definitely, I think, this sense of, I think society teaches us that it's like, okay, you've done that. Okay, one more, you can do one more. And I think over the last decade in particular, or maybe longer, I haven't really done any research into it, I just feel compelled that we've been taught to, you have this high paying corporate role, or you have this business, and then you've got your kids at home maybe, and you've got, a household you have to look after and maintain. That doesn't happen by itself. And then you have to make sure you have a circle of friends, because that's important. And then you have to make sure that, oh, you know what, that's not enough. You know what you need? You need a side hustle. Get a side hustle.
Right.
And
right.
it's just like, why are we doing this to ourselves? But we've just, and I definitely bought that. I bought into that. And so a part of Lillian in that journey, I say that I climbed the pinnacle of success, quote unquote success. I never labeled what success looked like. So when I got there, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if I'd reached it or not. And
Right.
I obviously hadn't, because I kept wanting more, quote unquote success. But yeah, and I'm saying quote unquote success because for me, I had never labeled what it was. I had never identified, okay, what does success look like for me? What do I want it to look like? And so it was just more. And I remember, going in to get a mortgage for our home, and they're like, you can borrow $4 million, right? I'm like, I don't need to spend $4 million on a house. I'm spending 1.6. That feels like a lot. Right. But it was just that other people, I mean, maybe I was tempted. I don't really remember, but it's just, I think society has got ourselves caught up in that a little bit, where a mortgage broker is saying, you could borrow $4 million, right? It's like, holy heck, wait, what do I do with a $4 million home? There's 3 of us. And so I climbed this pinnacle of success. It was never enough. I just was more. And I paid some prices. My son came along in 2015. I started the company in 2012. And after many IVF cycles, like I mentioned, we finally conceived, and he was born. I worked up until my water broke. And then I was emailing in labor. I was emailing the day. I remember being in the hospital looking over my son, my new son, and it must have been day 2 because TJ actually went to NICU to begin with. But so it must have been day 2. TJ was back in the room. Tom was laying in the bed snoring. So was TJ. And I was emailing again. I was working again 2 days later. And so there were so many things that I didn't think about. I didn't think, okay, what do I want it to look like when baby comes? What do I want it to look like when TJ arrives? Do I want to spend 6 months, with him, 12 months, 2 years? What does that look like? And I never stopped. I just never stopped. It was just go. And there were a bunch of prices I paid along the way with that. And so once I got to that pinnacle of success, things were already unraveling in a way. My son, we had a nanny when he was 6 weeks old, and then a live-in nanny when he was 18 months, whom he would call mum. And when she would remind him, I'm not your mom, he would call her not mom. I mean, I can laugh about that now, but that broke my heart. And so when you're faced with, something like things like that in life, that is just one small example. And you've got this whole company that, I had 20 odd employees. I had over 2,000 resellers around Australia and New Zealand. When you're carrying all that, it at some point, is it not going to break you? And it did, it really did, it broke me. And so I say that I climbed the pinnacle of success and then fell off a cliff, and then it all went down from there.
I relate to so much of what you've gone through. I mean, I certainly I haven't owned a $14 million company, and I had a very successful real estate business. And in 2008, you know, it started crumbling. Not that I
Right.
wasn't still just as successful, but the purchase prices weren't matching our lifestyle any longer because we had, to your point, gotten caught up in the, oh, well, you can borrow this, and oh, a fear of missing out. I don't want to miss out on this bigger house because prices are going up so high. And then, of course, here in Arizona, houses crashed to below 30% of what
Yes.
they
Yeah.
were. And I remember when Jacob was born, my now 14-year-old, I had a C-section, and 4 days later, I had my sister driving me from new build to new build with 2 different sets of clients because I couldn't drive myself and
Right.
needed that paycheck, right? And I don't know when it was and it was, probably even after Jeremiah, because then we'd gotten so far in that hole financially because of the crash. It was just always working now we're just trying to pay back what we owed that we put into the business. And, and like, to your point, the world really, I mean, that it operates on us being in debt and paying interest. I mean, that's how the banks thrive. It's how the governments thrive. It's how, regardless of what country you're in, I have a mentor that calls it the financial matrix, and it really is. And, where we thought we were doing everything right. And I felt the same way. I mean, no matter how well I did in real estate, I was always comparing myself to somebody else who was doing better. And it didn't matter what reward or award I had gotten. It wasn't enough. And I don't know when it was that, and I think it wasn't until probably after Jeremiah was born. And I started working for a real estate team because now, to your point, I have the side hustle and I've got the real estate to try and do both. And wanting to do both at a very high level, and just realizing that, wait a minute, way back when I decided to go in real estate, it was because I wanted the flexibility to be with my kids.
Yeah.
And I don't have that flexibility. And I think so often we get lost in that hustle or that grind, and this, to your point, the unattainable success, because we haven't defined success. And I have a mentor that said, and I really resonated with that so much, because I think, to our point, we decide when we're young, what are we going to do? You were going to either do Dancing with Madonna or you were going to do entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah,
And then you learn how to do that. And then that defines your lifestyle versus what we really ought to be asking ourselves is, what do we want? And I think for most women, we want time, right? We want time with at least for me, that was the one thing that I realized. I was now time starved. I wanted more than anything time. And for me, time with my family, time, time with, whoever, I wanted the freedom to choose where to put my time. Right.
Yeah.
And then when you're bound to some, and really with entrepreneurship, when you're self-employed, which realistically, unless you've bought a McDonald's franchise or something like that, you're tied to it, right? I mean, McDonald's, you can throw a bunch of 16-year-olds in there and not, it's such a great system. But, for you, that was still that, even though maybe for the folks that were selling for you, where that could be a system for them to leverage others, you were, at the end of the day, you still had to run it every single day.
Yeah. And, I yes, absolutely. I felt like I did.
Yeah.
I had an operations manager that quite easily I could have stepped away, in all honesty. But um, I think that it depends on the size of the business. I think that the size of the business that it was, if I wasn't there running it and being the captain of that ship, I guess I felt like it may have gone off its course, which is funny because I didn't, even as
Right.
a captain of that ship, I didn't really know what course I was setting sail to. I mean, I guess I did. We were going to always more. That was the destination, and there was no arrival port.
Right.
It was just, every port was more, and then the next port was going to be more again. But yeah, you're right, and it became a beast. I referred to it just earlier as a beast because there were so many people that now relied on Lillian. These women had that's how they paid their bills. This was for some of them, they were earning thousands and thousands of dollars a month from this business. And so they needed this to now pay their bills. So it was quite a lot on my shoulders that I felt like. So what had happened is I had introduced Lillian Beauty, the market had shifted, a bunch of things had happened, and we started to plateau. And there's a saying that I've heard that if you're not growing, then you're decaying. And it was really true. The company started to plateau. We were still doing over $4 million in sales a year. It wasn't a terrible plateau. But again, from this filter of never enough, you've got to be growing or you're decaying. I just was like, how do I get this back up when it was going this way? It's easy when it's going this way, but how do you get it kind of going this way when it starts to plateau and starts to go down? It's a very different growth to kind of, it's like pulling this boulder back up the hill to then push it back up. And it really feels like a boulder. When it's going up like this, it kind of has its own momentum. It becomes a boulder, but you're not the force behind it. Whereas I felt like, at least, I was having to pull this boulder back from coming down the hill, get it back up top of the cliff to then push it up again. And I really didn't have it within me. And I certainly almost killed myself trying, that is for sure. I not only was I battling with this broken heartness of being a mother who was not there, who had a son who at 18 months was calling someone else mom and then not mom, who didn't want to borrow me when I would come home. And it was, the stress was affecting my mental health, my physical health. I'd even been hospitalized. And I just got to the end of myself. I think that's the only way I can describe it, is that I kind of looked life square in the eyes. And I was also turning 40. That's a wonderful opportunity to have an esoteric midlife crisis, everyone. I was turning 40 and my husband was a couple of years away from turning 60. And I just started to question what this was all about. Like, why am I doing this? Why, with all of this success, it didn't bring the happiness I thought it was going to bring? I find no joy in a Mercedes because it can reverse park itself. Like, that was fun. When I bought that car, that was so exciting. I was like, wait until I show my girlfriends this. That big house that, was too big for 3 people. It was, it was keeping up with the Joneses, and it was representative of what I had accomplished. But was that bringing me joy? Right. Was it even bringing me happiness? No, it wasn't at all. And so I kind of had this opportunity. I guess I wasn't looking for it on a conscious level, but I found myself looking at life and kind of grabbing it by the shoulders, or it grabbing me by the shoulders, and asking me the really serious question of, what the heck is all this for? Is this really what you want? Is this really who you are? Is this really why you're here? And if I go back to when I grew up, I wanted to be an entrepreneur or a backup dancer to Madonna. The entrepreneurialism was something that society had taught me I wanted to become. It was something that my parents did. And so I felt like that was cool that my parents did that. But yet what I kept coming back to all of my life, and there's so many, and I think we could all find this, we could all find these little nuggets that we kind of go back to, and these clues that really tell us why we're here. And if I look at it, the clues were never entrepreneurialism, because for the longest time, I didn't jump into that. I never did. I never started a business. What I did start along the way, Brenda, was like women's retreats and doing seminars and writing a book and wanting to speak and share my heart. And it's so interesting that when I look back and see all those clues, that is actually when I went off the cliff and life took me by the shoulders and said, are you sure this is why you're here? What the heck is this all about? This is surely not what life is for. Life is not for your son to call you not mom or mum.
Right.
Life is not to drive a Mercedes Benz that can reverse park yourself, because I sure as heck, no one's going to care about that. And it's funny because I used to share with my consultants, at our conferences, I'd be like, we are a part of something bigger than ourselves here. And I really believe that's what Lillian was. It was a pure blessing. And I don't discount any of that. And I used to share, we can't take our Jeep with us. We can't take our car with us, we can't take our house with it. And everyone gets that. Everyone knows that. But what I used to also communicate was that when I'm at my own funeral and others are there, potentially, perhaps, hopefully someone will turn up, they're not going to say, you know what? God, I love Mel's house. I love that. The color she chose, or the curtains or the blinds, or they're not going to go, God, I loved her Jeep. Oh, it was such a beautiful drive, or I loved her Mercedes. No one's going to do any of that. And so life literally grabbed me by the shoulders, gave me a slap up the side of the head. I fell off this cliff and I kind of dusted myself off after asking myself the question. And it didn't look that beautiful.
Right.
It looked like months of anguish. It looked like crying on the bathroom floor. It looked like screaming at my child because I couldn't handle what was happening. I was being a terrible mother. I was being a terrible wife. I was in absolute anguish, Brenda. It was just the worst time of my life. And it was a good solid 4 years of my life that I was experiencing this kind of esoteric midlife crisis, and then this torment of coming to the end of myself, and it has a happy ending, y'all.
Well, let's jump into the happy ending after we hear from the sponsor. And I want to, you mentioned some of the clues along the way too. And I really want to talk to that because I want to commend you, one, for when you did start to see some of those clues, to start making some changes. Because I know, in my own journey, there were clues. And so often we don't listen to that inner voice saying, hey, wait. So let's talk about some of those things right after we hear from the sponsor.
Hello, good people out there in podcast world, cyber world. Interrupt your programming real quickly to tell you about our sponsor, Medium Lauren Robbins. Medium Lauren Robbins, if you look at someone who's warm, loving, genuine, and has a welcome energy, like talking to a friend, Lauren is the one to talk to. She's direct. She will tell you what you need to know, not what you want to hear, and will comfort you when you cry or when you are upset, like a good friend would. If you are a new client, she will make you understand what you requested before you even start the session or service. Visit MediumLaurenRobbins.com for sessions and services. Get hooked up with an endorsed medium today.
Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm Brenda Kilhoffer, your cheap mama, and we are here with my good friend Melissa Haupt. She is an author. She owned a $14 million business that she later sold, and she's really sharing her heart today and a lot of the things that she went through in getting back to who she really was at the core and in her heart versus who she thought she was. And I think this is a story that most women can relate to. I think we all, at some level, start our lives out living what we believe. Maybe it's not necessarily what others expect of us, but what we believe the world or what we believe others expect of us. We adopt that as our own, as something that, we're, okay, that must just be my purpose. And then I think especially as we become mothers and we start to miss out. I mean, I know in my career, I kept moving from place to place, trying to figure out how do I get to be both? Because I can relate. I mean, I appreciate you sharing that, you felt like a horrible mother. Because I think we all on some level at some point in time have those feelings, whether we're a screamer or not, or whether we're I mean, I've got one that quite honestly will hide things because he knows if I'm stressed and I'm at my short end, if he puts things in different drawers, I'm going to blow up. And it's now fun to watch me do that. But I do it, and then it drives me mad that I'm so short-tempered when those situations come up. So thank you for sharing that. And I know, and I'm super grateful. You said you haven't shared this anywhere. I really appreciate you trusting me and this show to share this with. And I really hope that there's a lot of women listening and giving themselves some grace for whatever they might be going through.
Yeah, sure.
So you had mentioned that, all of these things were going on and the universe kind of handed you this big sign. But I'm curious, along the way, were there smaller signs that when you look back, you could say, gosh, I wish I had followed that gut instinct? Because I know for me, I mean, I can remember sitting down on the stairs when we built that big house and kind of feeling like the market might be shifting or feeling like it was all a little more overwhelming than I was ready for and thinking, maybe we shouldn't do this. Oh, but wait, we've already got X amount of money into it. And you brought up the Joneses, what will everybody think? They're going to think I'm not a success if I don't, I've been talking about it. I've been sharing it, right. Those kinds of things. And, and then even further down thinking, okay, maybe we should let go of this one and just go back to our old one. And then, oh, wait, no, I don't want to admit that I failed. So were there ever signs or things like when you look back that you would say, oh, right now it's just too much to let go of? And
yeah, no, there really weren't. And I think that if I was to look, because you can't and your listeners can't, but I have the privilege of looking back of my life in totality, everything that I have manifested, including the climb of the pinnacle of success, and then the falling off the cliff, I really wholeheartedly in my soul believe that that's exactly what journey I needed to take to find myself. And when I say myself, I don't mean the essence of who I am here in this earthly form. Mm-hmm. And that's a whole other conversation. Like right. that is like the extension conversation. But I needed to experience what I experienced. Mm-hmm. And, I was listening to Eckhart Tolle. He had mentioned something just recently when I was listening that, it's only when we go through the adversity that when we go through an adversity, we most generally get a life lesson out of it. We get some growth out of it. if everything was just status quo, nothing rocked our boat, everything was super easy, well, then there'd be no growth, right? It's like if we were to go to the gym and we would never put pressure on the muscles, they would never grow. They would never grow. There'd be no growth. So you need that pressure applied. So I needed this immense amount of pressure applied. You know, it's like they say that some people they need to really hit rock bottom before they realize I can't do this anymore. I can't be addicted to these drugs, or I can't be, you know, whatever it looks like.
Right.
And so I needed to hit rock bottom, I guess. I needed to top out. I needed to realize that my set of sunglasses, my thought process around what I believed life should be and the success that I should attain, I needed to experience that. And then I needed to hit rock bottom and have none of it, because actually, even though I did go on to sell the company, that was all pear-shaped. I mean, it is quite the story. It's crazy. That was pear-shaped. And I was facing losing. We lost everything, almost everything, you know, and that both of those two extremes were exactly what I needed to be able to come to the end of myself and find me, why I'm here, and to go back to my purpose, which we all know what our purpose is. We're born with that, right? It's like, but I guess like you said, it's like we kind of get into this thing, you know. I started in a corporate career when I was out of uni, and then I just kind of was in that for a decade, and then I moved overseas, and then I kind of followed something for a decade, and then I did Lillian for about a decade, and now here I am. And realizing in my mid-40s that you know what happened with all of that? My grandmother also passed, whom I wasn't close to. However, she did live on purpose. And she, and I just part of it was me kind of acknowledging that it was actually a very visceral experience where I physically felt anxious and sick, that if I don't do what I'm here to do when I'm 60, because remember, I've got the lens of my husband who's 60 something to look through. So I've got that privilege.
And he's led a life of purpose. He
has. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I had that lens to look through. I have that fortunate experience. I have the fortunate experience of 4 years of hell on earth. And I also have the fortunate opportunity to see my grandmother live on purpose. And I thought at 60, if I'm not doing my purpose at 60, well then I'm really going to start at 60. So I don't want to wait till then. And definitely on my deathbed at 80 something or 90 something, I'm gonna look back and go, oh my gosh, I was one of the ones who actually knew. I knew all along, and I identified what it is. I have to do this. I have to do what I feel like I was born to do. And that was kind of the and that has been cheated out and drawn out. I mean, that was like 2 years ago now, and this is the first time I'm sharing a story, and I have not written, and I'm not speaking, and I've been in and out of jobs over the last 3 years, you know, running other people's companies, and again, higher powered jobs that sure, I'm not paying the same prices. I'm not putting myself back in that ship where I'm, you know, not seeing my son, and I have heeded the lessons I've learned, but not completely. And until now, where it's like, you know what? No, it is time, Mel. You got to do what you were born to do. I feel like God's saying, dude, I put you here for a reason, as I did everybody that's walking the earth. Like, you got to step into it. Like, I'm ready. Been waiting for you for 43 years. It's time to jump in. Let's do this. So,
and it's crazy when, you know, because I know in that purpose, you and I both have always kind of gravitated to the same things. And I've known that my whole life. And isn't it interesting how, you know, there's always, it's almost like, oh, I got to do this first. There's always the immediate gratification, whereas, when it comes to really stepping in your purpose, that gratification's not quite so immediate. Right.
It's not. And sometimes
And then
it's the financial reward that, let's face it, we all got to pay our bills, right? So we can get caught up, at least I can speak from that truth, that I get caught up in this kind of thinking that it's like, well, how am I going to pay my bills? But you know what? I got to believe that the same God that puts the moon in the sky at night and the sun in the sky at day, who causes the tides to come and go, who causes the entire universe to run pretty damn smoothly, who has the same God who has put me at this time with this particular set of me-ness in, God individualized as me with my set of everything that I have, my experiences, my strengths, my skills, everything that goes along with a package called Mel, that if he can figure out all that, I'm pretty sure that God can figure out having my back and putting food in my mouth and a shelter over my head. So
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, in that.
Yeah. If he feeds the birds and the bees and everything else, right?
Yeah, that's it, right?
And it's and in those down moments, I know even for me, in those really, really, really low moments, there were times that, just we were provided for. It made no sense, and yet it was there. And and I've watched, as a mom now of older children, I have watched. I've literally seen how, because it's easier when you're on the outside, and I've seen how God over and over again offers paths to go back this direction. And the beautiful thing is we always have free choice, right?
Yes.
And so we get to choose which path. And we often, it sounds like you, fortunately, the first time through said, oh, I'm on the rock. Let me get this, let me get here on this path. But, I know for me, it was, over and over. And really that whole letting go of it, like even, so I have a business now, and I was just having a conversation with a friend before you and I got on the phone. It was like, I know that I'm going to get paid in that business. I am getting paid, but I know I'm going to get larger paychecks. I'm going to hit other ranks, but it's not going to be because I hustle through it. It's going to be because I'm living in my purpose, doing these other things that attract people to the coaching, the mentoring that's offered there, and give them that place, those that really want that to grow and move. And, I just had a gal the other day, just, my life's falling apart. What am I supposed to do? And I reach out to her and say, hey, I'm part of this. Why don't you take a look at it? And, listen to, one audio, and just like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I'm looking for. So I think when we're in alignment with what we're, those things do lead to others. Versus
absolutely.
I think a lot of times what we try and do is say, well, when I get this done, I can go back to this, or when I have success here, then I'm qualified to do what I want to over here. And we're already given everything we need because
I think that there's a combination of things. I think that we're so busy trying to figure it out. I think that we're given this free choice, and we take that way too much. Like we're actually not in control. And the one thing that IVF taught me was that, oh my gosh, we are not in control. No. Like we think that we're in control, and we try and control, but there is something beautiful in the surrender. There is something beautiful in the showing up and leading with a sense of okay, this feels right. I'm going to do this, but trusting that, hey, if this isn't right, I can course correct, because we're going to do something, right? Like we can't sit on the couch and just like wait for this whatever to come along and tell us like, oh, like the heavens are not going to part, right?
Right.
But there's a gentleness about spirit, about God, and it's, I think that in essence what I've learned, and that 4 years experience of hell included the last couple of years of heaven on earth. It really has been quite a journey where, and of course, there's no destination in any of it. I've probably gained like a granular of, like a sand granular of understanding. However, the moments that I've been quiet, the moments when I've spent time just stopping, just slowing down, just the act of meditation every day, just going to that quiet has been the rescue for me. It's where I've come to find God, and not the God that I grew up knowing was God either. An entirely different God. But again, that's a whole other conversation.
It's you're so right. And I feel like we're really, I think that was the gift that COVID maybe gave to all of us, really a time to stop, forced to stop and slow down. And I think as we open back up, many of the listeners out there, many of the mamas that, their hearts are breaking because they don't want to leave the home. They've been able to be home finally and be a mama, be with their kiddo. You call them mums. I call them mamas.
Tom has TJ has this little American accent. He calls me mom. He calls me mom now, which is fun. He's 6 now and has not had a nanny for some time, and he knows who his mum is now. But yeah, he calls me mom.
But there's there was this slowing down, this ability to really just evaluate. And, I think it's important that, that people really do realize that what they think is expected of them isn't necessarily, it really is a time to say, hey, what is it that I want? Let me define the life that I want. And certainly, certainly making money is a factor. And a lot of times, if you really stop and break it down, when you throw all of those other expenses of childcare and, all of the other things that go into that.
Yeah, or commuting to a job, or
and
lunch at work, or that stuff will add up.
And 2 cars, having 2 cars. Like, do you really need 2 cars? We actually sold one of ours the other day. I was like, you know what? One sitting in the driveway, you have a company car. We don't need to have them both. Why pay the insurance? And when you can live on less, you don't require near as much.
Yeah,
when you're not
space.
When you really take some time to look at, am I being a good steward of that I have been gifted? And I do think, I'm so excited for you and for TJ that you learned these lessons really early on, because for me, it was much, much later for my older kids. And so they got a lot more of the
crazy,
the crazy. They got a lot more of the crazy, and they got a lot more of the me sharing those same expectations that, that I believed were expectations with them. So now there's okay, let's rewind, let's undo this, because that isn't.
Yeah. But what else? What else everything is perfect. Everything
Right.
is as it's supposed to be. The lessons that your older kids experience are going to set them up for their journey. You know, every
Right.
one of us have our own journey. And I really believe that facing adversity in our human experience just leads us closer to our spiritual experience. And without any of that, like I said, you know, if it's just the status quo and everything's kind of easy and we're just floating along, we have no reason to come to the end of ourselves. And it's only when we get to the end of ourselves that we kind of get on our knees and go, okay, I can't do this. I'm not doing it the right way, or you know, this is not what life is supposed to be about. There's something more to this. So it's all perfect. And I think if we can just kind of give ourselves a bit of a break every now and then and just allow a little bit more, just allow ourselves to not from the point of view that it's like, it's okay to scream at my kid. That's not what I'm saying. But don't look back and beat myself up for that.
Right.
It's like, you know what? That is what happened. It's only in the now that I can control. Mm-hmm. And it's often only when I'm thinking about the future that gives me anxiety and causes me to become stressed. So give way to that. And let's just be here now. Let's just be here now and let's be still. Let's be quiet. Let's just slow down. Let's just pause and let's just see what comes, you know, because that's where God is right here. God is never, there is no past, you know. Yeah. God doesn't exist there because there is no past and there is no future. It hasn't occurred yet.
Right.
This is right where God is.
That what you just shared made me think of, I saw some pictures from a year ago yesterday of my son, Jeremiah, learning to get on his horse and learning to do groundwork. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, that was only 1 year ago. And for the first time, like ever, it felt like that has been forever. Like all of that is just, it isn't like that was that this right now, this farm, the horses, that's what was meant to be. And I couldn't even imagine all of the other stuff that we went through other than it's a story to tell when I'm teaching others, right? It's no longer, I learned lessons from it, but it's not who I am, right? I learned lessons from that. And you know what? I don't know what tomorrow brings, but that's the one thing, you know, I had the opportunity earlier this week to interview somebody who trains horses. And she said it so perfectly that the one thing that horses teach you is being present in the now. You can't show up as anything but your authentic self with a horse because they are so intuitive in everything. And that's, you know, I guess it's where the horse whispering and everything. And she goes, and it's been such a gift. And it made me think, it's like, wow, you know what? That was why last year was so amazing, because I was learning some of that. And yeah, it's incredible. The world just gives us so many gifts in the adversity, in the ups and in the downs. And I do, you know, well, you and I are both familiar with Brian Clemmer, and, you know, your story, my story, it makes me think of, you know, how he talks about the camel going through the eye of the needle and having to let go of all of your things. And I feel like that's just been a part of that journey for me. Does that, you know, had to be willing to surrender all of that stuff that we'd accumulated, and just like, it's just stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't mean that it's bad or wrong. No, it just means that you can't, you know, you just can't pass through if you're carrying all of this baggage, whether it's, you know, physical, mental, spiritual, the attachments, all that. When you let go of that, well, then you really have an opportunity to become who you were always meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I'm letting go of all the stuff that's here, that's in our head, that's in our, like, you know, in our, you know, all of the I guess, yeah, the attachment we're holding on to is just to just let that go and just allow.
Well, I am super grateful for your time today. I'm really honored and grateful that you trusted to share this today with my audience. I mean, you could have shared it with anybody, and you
Well, you know
you did it with
what?
me, and I'm grateful for that. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. But you know what? You asked on LinkedIn and I said
Yeah.
yes. You
Yeah.
know, imagine if we showed up every day as authentic as we can be. Don't judge ourselves on that. It's like, this is authentic as I can be right now. And just say yes. And then see what happens. And just surrender to that. And see what happens.
Absolutely. I know there's going to be many lives blessed because of what you shared today. And I thank you for your transparency and sharing. And I can't wait to see you guys again the next time you get back here.
What is this little voice down here? We can't get out or in.
And definitely, you know, we brought up so many other topics. Would love to have you back on the show anytime. So, all right.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.